So how do you estimate the potential return on investment? Now, there is a couple ways, depending on how people classify return on investment. People do have debates on this, and there's all types of ways of understanding it. There's your capital growth or your equity of what you achieve. There's your cash on return on investment, which is the money you put in, how much cash you get back from a cash flow perspective. Then there is your return on investment. Okay, so if you put, you buy an asset and then your equity grows, you sell that asset, you got that return on investment as well. So there's all types of sayings that we say here in real estate, I guess, or state. And so we'll talk about a few of them and give you guys a bit of clarity. So let's get the first one. This is a percentage changing calculator. So let's say you buy a property for 400,000, okay, and after 6 years you sell it, or you still own it, but it's valued at 600,000. And this shows that your property has grown 50% since then after 2 years. So this is a great calculator to use. Skillsyourneed.com it is. So have a look at this. You can get it online. I just use it, if you want to look at and understand your percentage on your growth on your properties. Now, here's another, saying return on investment, okay, and how to understand this as well. So, this is in Investopedia, okay, it's a great website to understand return on investments, and they've got all different types of other types of meaning, how you can kind of understand it. This is the one I kind of like to use, is this one right here, understanding the first method. So, return on investment is your net return on investment divided by the cost of investment times 100. So, let's say you have put a deposit. Let's say you've bought a property and you've outlaid, 50 grand to that property, okay, as a deposit, okay, and the property, of course, let's say its net return of investment, okay, after expenses, and let's say you've sold this for, a property for 500,000. This is how you work it out. So just get your calculator, pretty easy, simple. You got your 500,000. The property is cost. You sold it for. You've divided that by 50k. You put that as a deposit on that property, including costs. Okay, times that by 100, and that gives you 1,000%. Okay, so 1,000% return on investment on that property. So this is a great way to understand that. So for when you're looking at the cost of what your return on investment is, because you actually outlaid 50k as a deposit back in the day on this property, including closing costs, okay, and the property is growing towards 500k, okay, and you've sold it, so your net return on investment is 1,000% on that. Now, here's another saying, is your cash on cash return. So a cash on cash return is the rate of return often used in real estate transactions, it says here, that is calculated the cash income earned on the cash investment in a property. Put simply, okay, cash on cash returns measures the annual return the investor made on the property in relation to the amount of the mortgage paid due the same year. Okay, so how I look at this is, let's say you have purchased an investment property, okay? Once again, you've put down a deposit on that property and you've got a mortgage, of course, attached to that property. Now, let's say your property is cash flow positive, okay? And so you want to understand the cash on cash return on investment, because once again, that's quite important. So let's just make it easy. Let's say you put 50 grand once again into the property, okay? And you've put 50 grand into the property, okay? As a deposit on it, including closing costs, and you bought the property at say 300. Let's say that property is returning you, let's just make it easy, $10,000 a year. Okay, so once again, you get your calculator out, and this is how you can go about calculating this. Is you get your $50,000 of what you've put in. Okay, divide that by the cash that you're earning, which is $10,000 a year. Okay, and it will equal, saying here, 5%. So you're making a 5% return on your money, okay? And so this is the formula right here, okay? As you can see, annual pre-tax cash flow, total cash investment, okay? Now, of course, sometimes this won't relate, because once again, you might have a property that's negative cash flow at the moment, and that's because of high interest rates and things like that, and that's completely understandable. So this term doesn't really get used that much, but it's a way to measure and understand your return on investment as well in a different saying, okay? So hopefully that all makes sense, okay? There's a few different ways of looking at cash on cash return. all I really like to look at is your, you got your ROI, return on investment, of how much money you've put down, how much that property has grown in value since then. Even if you haven't sold the property, I use that as a metaphor to understand how much I've made on that investment. But more importantly, is probably like you want to be looking at your equity. So you're comparing your debt to your equity and saying how much, you've purchased this property for X amount, you've got X amount of debt and the equity has grown, or the value of the property has grown, and you understand that return on investment, which is quite important. So, another simple way to do that is if we go back to our calculator that we had here, okay, and let's say you got a mortgage of, $355,000, okay, and let's say the property, once again, let's say you've got let's actually make this a little bit simple. Okay, you got $300,000 of debt on the property. Okay, the property, okay, is worth $600,000, so you got 300 grand of equity. Okay, then you start to know you've already made 100% of your money returned on that, because once again, if you have 300 against 600,000, that's 100% return. So I know if you were to sell that property, you've made $300,000, okay, and you've made 100% return on investment. So pretty easy to formulate that. So you can always get your mortgage. I'll use your mortgage and then use your new capital value if you were to sell it. It's a great way to understand your return on investment, or just your equity position of how much the property has grown. So, and then of course, you've outlaid your money that you've put in on this property as well. So, one step further you can take it is, you've put 50 grand on this property, okay, and it's just showing that you've made it 1,100% return on investment, okay, because you put a 50k deposit back in the day, you've owned this property for 10, 15, 20 years, and now the property is giving that return on investment in X amount of years as well. So these are some ways to look at it, and simpler ways, I guess, than getting too caught up on all the terms that you hear out there. I think just make it nice and easy. Whatever you've put in, whatever the property would sell for, there's your return on investment. You got your cash on cash return, but these are things that, if your properties aren't making money at this point, or just breaking even because of high interest rates, of course the cash on cash return, there's no point actually calculating because you're actually making a loss, okay? So hopefully that all makes sense. If there's any questions, please reach out once again, and thank you again. Please as well share this video with someone if you feel like they need something like this, or understand more about return on investment, cash on cash return, and understanding your equity position versus your debt.